Welcome to Jack Theology, a special Christmas
I was going to say, I hope this is the Christmas episode. If not, I'm wildly overdressed for this.
I know I missed out on my decorating and wearing the hat.
Yeah, I figured honestly that you would be in a Michigan, sweater.
I'm repping my son's swim team today.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, so he made his national team, and we had our national team meeting last night. So I got to find out how much I got to spend to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, to watch him finish probably 20th. But still, it'll be a fun
kids
time.
Sports. If you want to play at a certain level, it's expensive.
Yeah. So, and speaking of, 'tis the season for spending money.
Yeah, Christmas gift. A trip to Charlotte.
Exactly. That's basically
Merry Christmas.
Our family's Christmas gift.
And a stocking full of oranges and apples.
Yeah, there you go. We've reached a point with our kids. It's kind of refreshing that they don't really ask for a ton. So it's kind of nice. So we're trying to figure out that, and definitely Charlotte will be a big part of that.
Good for him. Good for him. Congratulations. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of hard work paying off. A lot of his mom and I driving him to and fro to practices and meets.
Swim team is no joke when it comes to time involvement.
Yes, it's a lot. It is a lot. But I enjoy it. I mean, if you have kids, you love to see your kids succeed in whatever they pursue. So you find the time, you find the motivation to get up and do it, especially if they're passionate about it. So that's a joy as being a father for sure. And I think so. Christmas it stirs up a lot of emotions. So we wanted to deconstruct Christmas today. We deconstructed Halloween a bit, All Saints Day. We briefly mentioned a couple thoughts on Christmas in that episode, but I thought it would be, and I've seen a lot on the Twitterverse and on Facebook about people and different debates and conversations around Christmas. So we're gonna dispel and we're gonna solve all those problems here in this hour episode.
It's tough. Now don't go destroying Christmas, okay, Scrooge?
Yeah.
I mean, I face this too. I'm the biggest. Let's question. Let's find the truth in something. Let's peel back all of the onion in order to kind of get to what is real and what is tradition and what's excess. And I have to admit, when it comes to Christmas, like there's this place in my heart that says, no, don't hurt Christmas. The compulsion to believe things that may not be defensible and may even actually be opposite of the truth is strong at Christmas time.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Christmas obviously is a big deal. Not only on the church calendar, it's Advent season is the start of the church year, so it's important. The church seems to think it was the most important thing that God came into the world, Emmanuel, God with us. So we start there. And then obviously culturally, there's just a lot with Christmas. It drives it. This is the holiday. So we talked about in the Halloween, how, we talked about how Christianity and pagan cultures and secular cultures kind of like learn to combine holidays, right? So that, if one group of people was celebrate, hey, I want to celebrate at that time. And I think that's happened at Christmas for sure. So like, it's definitely a capitalist holiday, right? Where capitalism drives business towards Christmas to selling. They want you to spend a lot of money. And so it's obviously a huge cultural capitalist holiday. And so a lot of things get kind of intermingled. And so one of the simple thing to deconstruct a bit is, and I heard this a lot growing up, you don't write Xmas, right? Because we don't want to take the Christ out of Christmas.
Amen. I'm glad you're laughing because I didn't mean that.
Well, it has
it has a long history, right? I mean, I didn't realize this until this week. I'm sure you knew this, but X was actually the way that the early church wrote the name of Jesus, because Greek letter X is the first letter in the name of Christ, but also because during those years, those early years, the oppression, they had to kind of hide their Christianity. And so if they were communicating about Christ, they would just simply write X, so that it was kind of this inside thing where if you knew what X meant, and it meant Christ.
Yeah, and then they added mass after it because it was Christ's mass.
Mass, which is a word for what, a worship for
Yeah,
service, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
The Lord's Supper. Hold on, I'm gonna strip down a little bit.
Yeah, I wondered what was going on there. Is this like oh, there's the Michigan shirt. No.
I don't know if you could see it a little bit here. So I have the X here as a tattoo, and so it's chai, and then I have the P row for
Cairo.
for Christ. So Christ chai is the X, and so it was written that way pre-American capitalism. And so it's that's a traditional way to write Christmas. The Greek way to write Christmas, Xmas.
I still write it that way a lot, but transparently, it's just to annoy the fundies.
Yeah. So, and then mass also, the base root is sent, missio. It comes from the word missio, which is sent. So it's kind of fascinating to think about, like Christ was sent, Christ mass. You could kind of play around with the Latin roots there. I don't know that they necessarily intended that Christ was sent. I mean, it was the Christ worship, the Christ Eucharist, where they celebrated his birth. But I kind of tend to like that play on words, that Christ was sent. So Christmas, Christ was sent.
Yeah. Part of the thing that I hear whenever Christians are confronted with the idea that, okay, by saying Merry Xmas, you're not actually cutting Christ out of Christmas. You're just using a symbol for Christ. And the response that I hear a lot from people is, well, it goes down to intent. A lot of people who write it that way are intending to remove Christ from Christmas, even if they're not actually removing Christ from Christmas when they think they are. I mean, what do you think about that? Is that a big deal that people would intentionally try to avoid it, and should we care?
Well, first of all, I think it's fascinating that I think people maybe intend, or it's just shorthand, right? But it was a cultural thing. It actually, it's interesting to see how that even was passed down through the generations, and people shorthand it. I tend to think, when people give me that argument, well, Christ says even the rocks will cry out. So even though people are trying to take Christ out, they're really not. I think we need to definitely, though, understand, and this kind of leads in the next one, the Merry Christmas versus Happy Holidays, is that we are in a world that, Christ says, be in the world, not of the world. So we're obviously in a dual celebration right now. There's those of us that celebrate the birth of Christ, and there's those of us that celebrate just this holiday season of whatever, fill in the blank of however you want to celebrate. And so I think, as Christians, if people want to take Christ out, like, that just is a point of knowing where they're at. Like, and then my job isn't to criticize them for that and to come down on that for that, is to love them, care for them, to meet them where they're at. Like, where I live here in the Northeast, like, the high Jewish population, and just right down the road is a huge temple, and up the road is one of the biggest temples in the Northeast. And so we see the medoras everywhere, and at my kids' school they have Christmas tree and the medora, and it's Happy Hanukkah, and so Happy Holidays fits where we're at. and I think it's a loving way to interact. I mean, Kwanzaa is another one that people celebrate around here as well. So I don't want to necessarily like criticize and come down because someone isn't like. And there's some families that are just very secular and they integrate a lot of different symbols around this time of year and participate in a lot of different traditions. Um, and I guess I just want to meet those people where they're at. So if that's what they're doing, fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally, I totally wish that was what Christianity these days was broadly known for, and I do want to give, I want to give kudos to those Christians who are where you are, who they just are grateful, and want to meet people where they are, and I think when it over the last few years as we've kind of had this war, it feels like, on the word happy holidays or Starbucks, using a cup, that doesn't seem to that doesn't seem to fit what Christians think a secular business should be utilizing during this season. It feels as though Christianity has kind of generally spun that into, we're being attacked. Our faith is being attacked. Our holiday is being attacked, and I think, I just think that's the wrong stance for Christians, is to take the victim mentality. First of all, we have to be honest and say there are other holiday celebrations, this type of year for this time of year for other faiths, and ours wasn't first. Just to be honest, we actually stole other holidays from them by co-opting them with our theology on top of them. And so, when it comes to this time of year, I just am like, why are we complaining that people are singing songs about Jesus, even if they're not Christian? Why are we complaining that people are watching the Peanuts Christmas special where Linus stands up there and reads Luke chapter 2 verbatim from the King James? People are hearing this time of year the message of Jesus, even if they're saying happy holidays, even if they're avoiding doing anything that smacks of Christ and Christmas. Meet them where they are. I mean, is there anything more Christian than that? If somebody says happy holidays to me at a checkout line, I'm going to say back, I'm going to say happy holidays to them. I'm going to meet them where they are rather than expect them to meet me where I am. Somebody says happy Kwanzaa, to me, or happy Hanukkah. I'm going to say right back to them what they said to me. Hey, happy Hanukkah. Because I want to be where they are. I want to celebrate with them where they are rather than expecting them to jump to where I am for some idiotic reason because I feel like I'm a victim at the holidays.
Yeah, the victim mentality is odd. It's funny because Halloween was originally, I believe, our holiday as Christians, and then the world secularism co-opted that, and originally December 25th was the sun god celebration that we co-opted, that the church put on. Let's celebrate Christmas. Let's celebrate Jesus. It makes a lot of sense. It's the first day after the winter solstice that you can actually see a difference in the sun on the horizon. And so kind of the idea was, well, December 25th, it's the sun god. It's the first time the sun is changing and becoming brighter. And so the church said, well, it's obviously the light of the world came into the universe at that time. And so let's celebrate Jesus, the light of the world. And, I love that symbolism of, when they were putting this together, we're going to celebrate on December 25th. Like, they didn't have what we have today to know that even on December 21st, the days got a little bit longer. But the December 25th was the first day to the naked eye that you can notice the day getting longer, which is fascinating to me. And yes, that leads to another point, is that no, Jesus was not born on December 20th.
Whoa. Now you've got too far. What? Come on. There's a line, Matt. We can't cross this line. Are you serious? You serious, Clark? We watched Christmas Vacation with the family this week for the first time. The kids had never seen it before. And my kids were like, oh, that's where that line comes from? Oh, that's where that line comes from? You serious, Clark? Come on.
There's a lot of lines. That's a great movie. There's a lot of lines from that movie. I watch that every Christmas morning after we open presents. I put that on for the family.
It's a classic. Anyway, so December 25th.
Well, so I mean, just from reading the Bible, you know that Jesus was born at Passover. Um, they were coming in for a census. As Mary and Joseph were going to Bethlehem for Passover. It's pretty clear, and so you couldn't rightly have Jesus's birth celebrated at the same time we celebrate and remember Jesus' passing, his death and resurrection. It doesn't make sense, calendar wise, and so it was a logical place to put it. The tree behind you was a symbol of the sun god, which is fascinating that now
and that's why we use it every year.
Yeah, it's a very Christian thing now. But we co-opted it. We put our symbolism. We put our
nothing like putting a dead tree in your house, right?
Yeah, Jesus is the light of the world on that, rather than worshiping the sun god. So yeah, Jesus was not born December 25th. Sorry to tell you that. I know there's people, there's fundies that are trying to fight to argue that Jesus was, and I don't understand why you would. It doesn't make logical sense when you actually read the plain and clear reading of the scripture. You do any sort of like research around Passover and where it fell. It never fell in December. Anyways. So
well, I think anytime Christianity takes this position of a victim mentality in the world or culture, there is a drive to delete all of the mystery out of it, to clearly define the difference between what is right and what is wrong, so that we can, kind of, this is our turf and this is their turf. And so, I think that it's systemic for us to kind of have to know exactly when Jesus was born and that it is December 25th and defend it on that day, because we've taken out the beauty of the mystery of gray in our faith.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and honestly, it doesn't even matter. Like, what does
Who cares?
Matter?
Well, it gives us something to argue about, Matt. Which,
yeah. Going back a little bit, I mean, closing the loop on Merry Christmas versus Happy Holidays. I loved you. I actually never heard this until you pointed it out, but it seems true to me. Is that
it makes sense? So it must be true.
It must be true.
I'm not gonna look it up. No, Happy Holidays started as a 3-word phrase: Happy Holy Days, and so we say Happy Holidays many times just as a generic greeting for all of the holidays that time of year, but they said it for the same reason for Christian holidays. It wasn't just it wasn't just Christmas Day. It was Advent, it was Christmas Eve, that 3-day Triduum, celebration there, and then obviously after that, then you have Epiphany, 12 days after Christmas, with the arrival of the wise men and its celebration. So all of that was kind of included, and they would greet each other with Happy Holy Days, which eventually became Happy Holidays. And so whenever people say Happy Holidays, they're actually literally saying Happy Holy Days, which just kind of makes me laugh.
It's great, and I think it's perfect. It's like a perfect compromise, because whether you celebrate Kwanzaa or Hanukkah, it's a holy day. Right?
It is a holy day, and I think it's okay for us to say that. Just because it's not a Christian holy day, it's not a Christian sacred day, doesn't mean that other people cannot have holy days or sacred days that are holy and sacred to them. Now we might say, well, theologically, we have some questions about what it means to be sacred and what it means to be holy from our vantage point, but I don't think that requires us to say that no other day or no other celebration can be for someone else holy or sacred to them. And I feel like part of what is needful in our Christianity today is to allow people to be where they are and see their faith and their expressions and the way they live as being as equally valid as ours in the world, and then move from there into a conversation about how do we reconcile your beliefs and your holy days and your sacred days with my beliefs and my holy days and my sacred days. But let's begin with validating people where they are and saying it's okay for you to celebrate something different than I do. It's okay for you to call your celebration holy and sacred. And so, yeah, happy holy days, happy Jewish holy days,
Yeah.
happy Islamic holy days. You're not you're not turning your back on your faith. You're not renouncing Jesus by doing that. You're saying, I respect you as an individual.
Yeah.
And they know you don't agree with their faith.
They know. I mean,
they know that. Like yeah. You don't need to tell them. You don't have to be an ass.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there subscribing to be an ass, and so I don't think that's what Jesus would have done or did.
Well, wasn't no.
Yeah.
You know who he was an ass to? The fundies of the day.
Yeah.
The fundamentalists of the day.
He called them a brood of vipers.
Whitewashed
John
tubes.
John the Baptist. Sorry, John the Baptist called them a brood of vipers. Which I find fascinating that the church put that in the Advent season every single year, the brood of vipers scripture. Well, this is where we're going to teach it at Christmas time.
Makes complete sense.
I probably they had issues like we're having today around Christmas, even 1,000 years ago, whenever they put together the church calendar. Yeah, and you know what? I've never had a Jewish person in my life get mad at me when I said Merry Christmas. You know what they say back to me? Merry Christmas.
Which you know how hard that is for a person of Jewish faith.
Yeah.
To say the word Christ and to affirm your celebration of a Messiah whom they have very strong opinions on. I mean, the fact that they can do that, because same with me. We live in a very Jewish community here as well, and I've been amazed at how they live their faith in the world versus how my peers, how I and we live our faith in the world. I think they do it well as compared to us in a lot of ways, and that's one of them.
Yeah, agreed. So some thoughts on the story of Jesus. So common.
Here we go.
Here we go. I always annoy people.
Don't kill it for me. Parents, this might be the time to turn it off if your kids are in the room.
There was no Motel 6 or Holiday Inn. There was no Jesus or Mary and Joseph were not headed to a hotel. And so we translate. I mean, I think the King James was the one who made this mistake of translating. There is no room in the inn. Proper translation was there is no room in the dwelling, the place that they were going to stay. And so, like a Jewish home, so like what would happen in those days is there was no necessarily hotel, as they would stay with the closest family member that was to them as they were traveling. And so they were heading to family. They were heading to Passover. They were heading to a census. Lots of people are heading into town. And so Mary and Joseph came to their family's house, and there was no room in the dwelling for them to stay. And so a traditional Jewish home was made up of a few different rooms. Like there was the kind of the outdoor patio welcoming area. There was kind of the living room, dining room type area inside. And then there was like the family master bedroom where the family would sleep. And so a good Jewish host would give up their master bedroom and they would sleep in kind of the living room, dining room area. And so there was no room for them in either the living room area or into the master bedroom. And so they ended up in the fourth room in a traditional Jewish home was where Mary and Joseph stayed, as we know, which this is true, is where the sacrificial animals were kept, where the donkeys were kept, where the animals were kept to keep the home running, to feed the family. And so that's the only room that was left in this home that they were to stay in. And so that's where they stayed.
So there was no barn outside of town?
No barn. Likely it was a cave. The most, in the historic ancient Bethlehem, most people had a cave dwelling. So likely it was in kind of a cutout in some rock that Mary and Joseph stayed with some animals.
Yeah. So, in the house, outside the house, connected to the house. Any idea?
It would have been connected to the house. Yeah.
So the family has taken a beating over the years for kicking a pregnant woman out, into the barn outside of the city,
Yeah.
and that's
And likely
not really the way that it
it,
was.
and likely it was probably the warmest place for them to be. Um, you really think about it, it probably might have been the best place for a pregnant woman at that time, without being able to stay in the master bedroom. Um, yeah, it was definitely better than the patio. The front patio was, and it probably better than the living room, dining room that was connected to the front patio. It's not like they had big doors that were insulated at that time.
So you get some privacy and some warmth.
Yeah, some privacy, some warmth. I find it really fascinating. So like this is Passover. Likely there's Passover lamb in there, and that's a whole nother. When we deconstruct Easter, we can talk about all of that.
Well, Bethlehem was known for that, right?
Yeah.
The Passover lambs came from Bethlehem. The shepherds in the story are shepherding the Passover lambs.
Yes.
For Jerusalem.
That's a good point for this too. Is like they're shepherding the lambs that people were going to purchase to sacrifice at Passover, and so it's all this connection, all this symbolism. Jesus is born in the Passover lamb's room, as the ultimate Passover lamb, right? The announcement went to the shepherds first, who were guarding and watching over the Passover lambs for the people of Israel. That now this Savior who would end all of this has come. Yeah, all that symbolism is beautiful, and I think it shouldn't be a loss on us that that's what's going on here, and I think the God of the universe is being intentional with this. He's announcing that the Passover lamb, the ultimate Paschal lamb, has come, um, and that's just I think it's beautiful. So if you're stuck on there was no room in the inn, and Jesus was an outcast and thrown into the wolves, sorry to disappoint you, but it's just more.
I feel like the family did the best they could. It's not like they had cell phones. Mary and Joseph are coming from like 500 miles away or something. Like it's a long way between Nazareth, way out in the country, all the way down to Bethlehem, which is just outside of Jerusalem. Did the family even know they were coming? Did the family even know that she was pregnant? Until they arrive.
There was no way they would know she was pregnant. They probably assumed that certain family members would be coming, but yeah, there was no way for them to know she was pregnant. And like, I think it was probably the perfect room for them. Even if they throw them in the master bedroom, like, you're ready to give birth, like, and you're with other people.
You got the cousins and
yeah, that's just not ideal.
The in-laws and the outlaws and all. Yeah, we'll go be with the animals. Y'all just enjoy your sleep. I'm not pregnant, and I'm not pregnant, and I would choose to go out and be with the cows rather than be in the room with the family.
Yeah. So that's one big deal. That's normally I make a play on that for my Christmas sermon pretty much every year, because I think it's important that we understand why Jesus came, what his purpose was. And I think that's why there was so much excitement from the shepherds. Like, they got it because they spent a lot of time with these these sacrificial lambs. They got it. That, and then this really isn't Christmas, it's Epiphany, but there wasn't just 3 wise men.
Okay. You're killing me, Smalls. It never says that though, right?
No, it never says. It just, we get that from, the song "We Three Kings of Orient Are," which is very racist. And that there was three gifts that there was talked about. That's really where I think the song probably got it from. Three gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But it was likely dozens of folks that were traveling.
I mean, it would have been unsafe to travel only three people,
Yeah,
along those
and
roads
these
at
were
that
wise
time.
men. Yeah, these were powerful people. So they, even if there was only three of wise men, they were traveling with a lot of folks. But I think it's pretty well established that it was dozens of wise men that were traveling to see Jesus, to see the King, which is fascinating. That I mean, I think this is a point of Christmas, that Jesus doesn't just reveal himself to his people; he reveals himself to all men. I think that's an important point of the wise men story, is that even those far from him, he's revealing himself to. And so, for us as Christians, to think that God only reveals himself in the way in which he revealed himself to us, and that everybody has to fit into that mold, I think is a terrible way to look at our King and what he can do. And
That's
so yeah,
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just thinking I've never thought about that before. I mean, I've thought about the fact, that it's a sign that Gentiles kind of saw it first, that outsiders, understood the story first. But I had never thought about it just from a broader global perspective, that outsiders oftentimes, or maybe even always, understand the soonest. Because I guess that's not just in this story. When you think about Jesus and the disciples, and then the community as his life moves forward, the disciples got it last. It was people who were further out who understood first, and the closer you got to the inside, the harder it was to see the truth and what was really going on, and to accept. And I was just, as you were talking, I'm like, that's just that's even brilliant. I think for today, for us to listen to the margins of community, because the wisdom and the truth may be there, and those of us who are closest to the center, or the core of the faith, may be the last ones to be able to see that something is different, or that something is wrong, or that we don't see what's truly going on. I think that's just it just kind of struck me as you were saying, just the global nature of the truth of that is compelling. That it's the margins, maybe oftentimes, are always who get it first, or see it first.
yeah, that's good. I was just, as you're talking, I was just thinking about the people that get it the most here in our congregation, are the people that are newest to the faith, that have just started entering in the faith. Like, they get it so quickly, and it's amazing. Um, and that's something to explore, like why that is. But I think it's true. Like when you look at it, um, and it's exciting, it's refreshing to see too. Probably a lot of it is that there's not a lot of baggage to work through, um, spiritually or
A lot less to deconstruct, or
yeah,
to declutter, if you prefer that word.
declutter. Yeah.
Yeah. So the wise
Um,
man, it's a crazy part of the story. I mean, it really is. It's compelling. It's one of my favorite parts, just because it's so weird.
yeah, yeah. And Jesus was what, like, he was a bit, he wasn't a baby when they got there. So
Wait,
they
what?
can he he wasn't
Say that
he
again.
wasn't at
What
he
what
wasn't
what'd
at
you
the
say? I had trouble hearing that. I thought I heard you say.
the wise men were not at the nativity scene. Um,
Uh,
Jesus was.
Actually, they were, because this nativity right over here behind the camera says they were. They're sitting right there, Matt. They're, in fact,
Uh,
right next to the shepherd.
yeah, it took them a couple years to get there, which also is another fascinating thing, that they were committed to this. They went through a lot to see Jesus. They weren't like us Americans who just want a sign right away. They stuck with it, and they were rewarded. Um, so that's one area where we get the idea for gifts from the wise men. Um, Probably the biggest reason we get gifts, we think of gifts at Christmas, is because old Saint Nick. And I
Santa
guess
Claus.
we'll close with this deconstruction piece, unless you had something else. But that's the
No,
big
no,
one.
I think we've
This is the
destroyed.
big one.
I think we've destroyed enough Christmas for one podcast. By the time we get through Santa Claus,
um, so Santa Claus, and you know more about this than me because you've written a lot about it. But Santa Claus was not just a Disney character, right?
yeah, no, I think our idea of Santa Claus comes primarily from two places. It comes from the night before Christmas, that old poem story, and Coca Cola. And so, the images of Santa Claus that are in our mind of this jolly big man in red who comes in a sleigh with that image of him of our minds comes from Coca-Cola and from the marketing in the early 1900s and maybe even late 1800s, but I think it's in the early 1900s. In fact, even in the night before Christmas, Santa's an elf. Santa's small, like Smurf size. So, traditionally, Santa wasn't even like human in the story of that. Now, every culture around the world has a different kind of concept of this idea of Santa, but you go to other countries in the world, many of them, if not most of them, have this idea of Santa or this version of Santa, which means that it didn't just come from Coca-Cola or didn't just come from the night before Christmas. The American version of that came from those places, but there must be something behind the scenes much deeper that's driving that kind of around the world thing, because it didn't start in America. And that's because it comes from a real person, Saint Nicholas, a bishop, a pastor, a clergy person in the church, in the Christian church, in the area that we now refer to as Turkey, in the third century, in the late 200s, early 300s. This man named Nicholas was known for being an extremely generous individual, was known for being extremely generous to children, for giving gifts in anonymous ways to people. He, as best we know, grew up in a very wealthy family, but turned his back on that wealth in order to go into ministry, and then used that wealth long term in order to bless other people. Now, there are a number of stories and legends, as you might imagine, over 1,600 years or so that have grown up around this. Some of it's crazy. I mean, if you get into the story of Saint Nicholas and miracles and the things that he did, it's kind of hard to cut a straight and fine line between what is truth and what is not truth. But what we do know is that Nicholas existed, that he was a very generous and giving person, that he seemed to have an affinity for doing that to children, and on behalf of children and the poor and the down and outers, and that he was seen as being important enough to Christianity to have been made a saint. And so Saint Nicholas is the very real foundations of what would become the legendary Santa Claus.
So Santa is Christian.
Yes.
Yes. So there's a lot of folks out there that are like, "Wow, Christians can't do Santa Claus." Now, you our culture, starting with Coca-Cola, now Disney. I think Tim Allen's coming out with more Santa Claus movies.
Which, by the way, are like my kids' favorite Christmas movies.
I love them. They're great. They're great. They're fun. They're not stressful. Yeah, they're easy wins for the kids. If you don't want to do all the magic behind Santa Claus, that's fine. But I think before you throw out something like that, um, obviously, I think we all would say Santa, what he did, Saint Nick, is very Christ-like. Giving gifts is very Christ-like. Taking care of others is very Christ-like. And so, if you want to reframe it, reform it, talk differently about Santa in that way, go for it. But I don't think you can just throw out Santa Claus as unchristian when the very foundations of it started with a bishop in Turkey years and years ago. I think do a little research before you throw it out. And I think, even Halloween, similarly, like a lot of Christians just want to avoid it because they don't understand it. And this one I think is the same. Like, just don't throw it out because you don't understand it, and people want to replace like things with stuff from the Bible and different things like that. And it's like, well, rather than Santa, let's do a shepherd. What, you know? Um, so I think rethink that, reframe it. I love, do some research on the story of Saint Nick. Maybe you read it to your kids and kind of. I know one family in our church community. It seems like this is a popular tradition. I think it was December recently, just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, December 6th is the feast of Saint Nicholas. Every
Yeah.
saint has a day that is theirs because there are more than 365 saints. There are like several thousand at least. There are several saints in one day, but December 6th is the date where the church has historically remembered Saint Nicholas. So a lot of people celebrate Saint Nicholas and celebrate even Santa Claus on December 6th in order to kind of free up December 25th to focus more on Jesus. And a lot of people use Epiphany the same way as well. 12 days after December 25th is the celebration of Epiphany. January 6th, I think, is when that falls, if I'm off, but it's right in
my
there.
birthday.
And a lot of people, happy early birthday. A lot of people will celebrate and do gifts then instead of December 25th because the wise men brought gifts to Jesus on that day, and so they'll shift it to that 12th night party.
Yeah.
But I think there's an opportunity. I love that you said to reframe it. I think that's a great word for us to redeem these stories without having to resist some of these traditions. We can find a middle road between fully just ignoring the consumer nature of it or fully playing into the consumer nature. Take a middle road where you use it as an opportunity to leverage and educate yourself and your family, your kids on the background of some of these and why these traditions are here. And St. Nicholas is an incredible way to reframe and add Christianity to Santa Claus.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And I think the more like I think just distancing ourselves from everything that we find secular is not the way of the church. Clearly, right? If any holiday was co-opted, it was Christmas, and so the church is all about that. So like, and you actually have like now you have groundings in faith stuff like Santa Claus. What it's become, the Disney version of Santa Claus, it's all magic, and if you don't want to teach your kid all of the magic behind that, fine, but there's some real faith-based stuff behind the development of Santa Claus that you can point your kids to and teach them about, that I think would be powerful and valuable and a great way to disciple children, rather than just throwing it all out. And there's lots of things like that in life. And so like the fundamentalist side of Christendom tends to throw all that stuff out and ignore it and try to isolate themselves. And I just don't see that as what God called us to do. When Jesus came, he actually incarnated himself. Like John chapter 1 tells us, he pitched a tent in the midst of people. Like he lived with the people. Jeremiah 29 talks about God tells Israel to just become citizens of this country and just live and have families and be a part of the city and help the welfare of the city. Like he nowhere in scripture do you see, let's isolate ourselves and take us completely outside of the culture and not participate in it. No, he wants us to participate in it and bring new life and bring love and all the things of Christ to it.
Yeah. And we don't really ever see, at the high water marks of church history, we don't really ever see Christians ever doing that. Was there a distinct difference between the way Christians lived and the way the non-Christian, non-believing world lived? Yes, there were very distinct differences in the way that they lived, but it was not in these countercultural ways. Christians were very distinct in the way that they lived, in the way that they treated the poor, in the way that they treated minorities, in the way that they treated the down and outers, in the way that they treated the oppressed. These are the ways in which the church separated themselves from the world to great effect, was in those ways. It was not in these victim-driven culture war. We're going to screech repent at you from the other side of Santa Claus. No, this is not the way that the church has done it through its history, and certainly not the way that the church has done it that caused there to be a coming to Christ where hearts were changed towards him and towards God. Has sects and segments of the church done this throughout church history? Yes. But they were outsiders. They were not the norm. And the result of that was always disastrous and didn't lead to revival, didn't lead to a great change in people's hearts or lives.
Yeah. It doesn't lead to anything good. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with it. And you know, I, I don't understand. Like, this is like the time. This is like our holiday. Like, this is like our number one holiday as Christians, and yet it just seems like, and these are definitely secondary issues. Like, if anything's a secondary issue, it's what if you say Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and it just seems like the fundamentalists, like the Theo Bros, like they get really bent out of shape about all of this. I mean, Donald Trump like ran part of his platform is we're gonna say Merry Christmas again. Like, what
Nobody was ever stopping you.
What are we doing? And there's like serious fights going on in the church because of like how you view Christmas, and it's just wow.
Yeah, I have asked people, started asking people why do you want people to affirm your faith? Tell me what it is that wants you to compel people to use the language you want and to act the way that you want, when it's not coming from a place of belief. It's not coming from a place of understanding or commitment. Why do you want people to pretend to be something they're not? Because that, to me, is kind of what it comes down to, is we're trying to force people to perform. And I'm going to force you to say Merry Christmas rather than Happy. Like, what is broken in you that makes that an important enough issue to compel people to say Merry Christmas rather than Happy Holidays? There's something wrong in you. There's something wrong in me if that's what my Christianity is performance and conformance. And maybe I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know if we have time to go on this, right? But maybe it's because that's what my Christianity is to me. Is more performance and conforming rather than something that comes out of a deep well of transformation and commitment to Christ. And so, because I live my faith that way, just simply performing and conforming to things, I expect everybody else to act in the same way, to just simply perform and conform. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's a big piece of it. I also think too is like with the effects of globalization and like a lot of new cultures coming to America. We're now, as Christendom, being exposed to different cultures for the first time, and it's jolting. Like, oh, people think differently than us, and then you have this fight. Well, make America great again. What does that mean? Well, that means let's go back to where it's just all white Christians in America, right? But like, you're not putting that back in the bottle, right? It's out. Like we have so many different cultures, and it's beautiful. Like the mosaic of our cultures here. like, and you only got exposed to that previously. If you actually traveled the world, you would realize, oh, we're not the only ones. Like this isn't the only belief system out there. Um, and so, how do you love your neighbor in a world that is so different from you? It was easy to love your neighbor when we all agreed, on everything.
When they all look like you, worship like you, acted
Yeah.
like you, but yeah.
So now, how do you love your neighbor? And so I think there's this fear. I think you're right. Is trying to make people like me because everyone should be like me. But also there's just this fear of like they don't understand, and we're losing it. We're losing our country. We're losing the world. No, you're not really. There's still a lot of you. It's just your neighbors look very different. Um,
Well, I mean, I think that's the story of the Good Samaritan, the Syrophoenician woman. Jesus is continually pressing his disciples to understand that they live in a world where there are other perspectives, other voices, other ways of doing things, that people look different. And um, Jesus may Jesus may stop short of full affirmation of all of those belief systems, but Jesus never tells us to act or respond to people who are different or think different or believe different than us in the way that we're responding and acting. I mean, the Good Samaritan, Samaria rejects Jesus and the disciples. They were truly victimized, in a way by the inhospitality of Samaria. Jesus, the sons of thunder say, well, let's just call down fire from heaven and destroy this place. And Jesus is like, let me tell you about the Good Samaritan.
yeah.
And so I think that we have to wrestle with this idea that if we see Jesus, or if we see ourselves as needful or being compelled to act in this way towards those who are different and diverse from us, even theologically, as being from a place of Christ in ourselves, it's not coming from the Christ place in you. It's coming from a very dark and unchrist place within you, which is the story of the Good Samaritan. Jesus was pushing against that idea that people who are unlike us or think differently or believe differently and even victimize us should be compelled into hospitality and into belief. He says, actually, they're pretty good people.
Yeah.
You might want them around when the trouble hits.
Yeah. I love it too that like most people of those days, especially the religious, they would walk around Samaria to get to the north and the south, and Jesus would go right through it. I love it. Like he didn't avoid it.
It's very Jesus, right?
He embraced it. Yeah. I love the 8 part of Jesus.
And not to preach repentance, it seems. Not to preach repentance to Samaria.
Yeah. He just cared and loved on him, and yeah, it's and yet here most white fundamentalists, conservatives avoid all of that as best they can. Yeah, it's not the way of Jesus, for sure.
It's not. And Christmas, I think, is maybe the best time of the year to truly show the way of Christmas. I mean, to show the way of Jesus by being the sort of person who gladly celebrates happy holidays rather than only Merry Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Amen. How's the lift?
Yeah, how's I was going to ask you to say you first. Jinx.
Went in this morning. Was chest day, bench.
Yes.
A lot of push-ups.
Chest day, best day, wow. Right?
So my boobs are feeling it. I'm still beat up for Monday. We did this. I posted on Facebook this deadlift and assault bike workout after doing heavy deadlifts and our strength. And I'm just still beat up from that, man. It just it was brutal, brutal.
Yeah.
And they give you these rests. So like, I don't know if when you were doing CrossFit, if it was popular. It's become a lot really popular now. Is like, and the concept was um, like a runner came to CrossFit and started teaching CrossFitters how to develop their like cardio capacity better.
Yeah.
And so like one of the things that he would do in his running career is like he would do sets at like I would do 5 mile run, 5 1 mile runs with like a 1-to-1 rest between, right? And so then he brought that to CrossFit. So rather than just do 1 WOD as a set, 5 sets of it, right? With a
Right.
1-to-1 rest between. And that rest, dude, is the worst. I would rather just do 5 rounds and 5 sets of something with a built-in rest. Like the rest just like tricks your body. All the lactic acid builds up. But the theory behind it, and it's true, like your body learns your heart rate to get down. It learns to fight through all that lactic acid buildup, and you actually, become stronger, you become fitter over time. But those workouts are just brutal, brutal.
I mean, especially when you're combining the assault bike. I mean, the
Yeah,
assault
and the
bike just
assault
on its
bike's
own
no fun.
it was created in like the ninth circle of hell. And
Yeah.
it is demonic.
Yes. Because the faster you go, the more it works against you. It's just one of those. Oh, yeah. And then if you don't go fast enough, you don't go anywhere. So yeah, it's brutal, brutal. How you been?
Yeah, I haven't broken any PRs lately, which at my age, you just kind of understand. I may never break another PR again. The best days may be behind me, but I'm going to continue to bust them out and keep trying just in case something happens. But yeah, I haven't been feeling it the last week in the gym. But I've lost weight now that I've stopped eating candy corn, so I'm down like 10 pounds from where I was, just from candy corn. I've not changed anything else in my diet other than candy corn, and I've lost 10 pounds. So I'm blaming it on the fact that I'm 10 pounds down, so there's just not as much mass there to move it. But I think the reality is it's just sometimes you're on, and sometimes you go through seasons where you're just kind of maintaining and trying not to lose, and that's where I am. But I got no complaints.
Yeah.
Except for
you might be at the point in your life where you have PRs in different
in different ways.
Of your life. Well, like you might have to draw a line. I'm in a new chapter now, so like young Kevin, that was his PR for young Kevin. Now,
yeah.
45 plus Kevin, this is his new PR schemes.
Yeah, I do. I will admit that now I do kind of measure success by just being able to put the standard amount of weight in the air on most days, where it's like, okay, my rep weight, if I can keep my rep weight the same,
yeah,
it doesn't matter where the PR is. Cause I mean, I know like when I get to my 50s and 60s, that rep weight is I'm not going to be able to even put up, for sets, the same weight I'm doing now. So yeah, you're right.
I was talking with an older gentleman this morning, and he was like, these days it's just being able to show up in the gym and get a good workout in. He's like, that's my PR. That's my goal. He's like, occasionally I get a workout that's right in my wheelhouse and I like blow it out of the water. But most days
it's fascinating. It's fascinating though. I'm getting crankier in the gym as I get older, and I'm noticing this. Like things that people will do, I used to not really mind putting away people's weights, and now it makes me frustrated whenever people don't put their weights back,
or whenever
like you'll get out some dumbbells and take it over to the cable machine, and you shouldn't have dumbbells in the cable machine anyway, but whatever. If you're going to do a superset or something, take the dumbbells back over where they were. They don't belong here. Leaving them, not racking them at the dumbbells is one thing, but not leaving them like 50 feet away from the dumbbells and not putting them back is insane. And I know, I'm just griping here. There's a guy yesterday who's vaping in the gym. Like he's doing reps. Yeah. He stops.
He's vaping.
He vapes and then goes back, I, I mean, the dude was big, but I've come to the point in my life where guys who are like physically bigger than me, that it doesn't scare, like, I'll whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think he was like bigger than me, but he was a big dude. He was taller than me.
Yeah.
I came so close. I like had to pray my whole way through that. Like, dude, I can smell that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be smelling your vape in the middle of the gym. And then the college kids are coming back, and bless their hearts. They can't pass by a mirror without looking in a mirror. And so, like, I'm on the cable machine. They're like posing behind me. I'm like, I cannot focus on my form while you're posing behind me. Like,
and those guys never do a rep. Like, that infuriates me. Like, I want to just coach them. Like, this is how you actually do a rep.
No, no, it's sad, you know. But he's there with his girlfriend, and they're, you know, she's got on the booty shorts as tight as they can be, and all they're doing is just posing in front of the mirror. I'm like, you can do that at home. And I don't even mind if you do it here, but find a mirror to do it in front of, where there's not somebody working out between you and that mirror. And so I just, like, every time they would start it, I would just, like, I'd let go of the cables, and the weights would just drop, and make this huge clang sound, and then I just stare, and then you know, they'd be like, "Is he looking at me? Did I do something wrong?" And then I just go on, and it happened like 2 times or 3 times, and I think by the 3rd time they're like, "Yeah, he's not happy." So, yeah, I'm getting cranky, man. I'm getting cranky.